I'm Elex Michaelson. This week, the issue is the Democrats debate.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47.
Beto O'Rourke trying to change the national discussion on the issue of guns. But did it work? We assembled a group of undecided voters to watch the debate with us. Who do they think won? Plus, President Trump traveling to California next week and vowing to tackle our state's homeless problem. But is his proposal legal? That and more with our panel, Bob Shrum, Lisa Bloom, and Peter Van Voorhis. The issue is starts right now. And welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson. There's so much to discuss with the panel. We got such a great group that we wanted to get right to them. Bob Shrum is the co-director of the USC Center for the Political Future. He's helped to run the campaigns of John Kerry, Al Gore, Ted Kennedy, and so many more Democrats over the years. Lisa Bloom is back. She's one of the best-known female attorneys in the world. Most of her career has been spent representing women who are victims of sexual harassment and abuse. She's also a Democratic activist. Peter Van Voorhis is a conservative political commentator, contributor to the Washington Examiner. He's a frequent guest on Fox News Channel. The LA Times called him the fresh face of the GOP. Welcome to you all. And Lisa, before we begin, you've been in the news a lot recently, and just want to mention it really quickly. It involves your work for Harvey Weinstein. There's a new book written about that. You have apologized for that on Twitter. You've said it was the biggest mistake of your life.
Yes.
You also can't talk about it much more because of attorney-client privilege.
That's true.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Well, 2 years ago, when the first woman went on record accusing him of sexual assault, I resigned immediately, apologized for the months I spent working for him. And I went even further than that. I took my law firm from 95% victim side representation to 100%, and that's where we stay. And since that time, we've doubled in size. We've represented hundreds of victims of sexual harassment and assault. I have a press conference on Monday in a new case involving LGBT rights. So all I can do is acknowledge my mistake and working for that man and learn from my mistake and be as open about it as I can. And to anybody who ever missed the apology, I apologize again now.
Yeah, and you can read more about that on her Twitter page. And she wasn't booked to talk about that. We're all booked to talk about the debates. So let's talk about...
She'd be very good in the debates.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the debates. And one of the moments that's not scoring especially well for the debates is what Julian Castro did in terms of his attack on Joe Biden. Let's play that.
Are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago? Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
This is why presidential debates are becoming unwatchable.
Yeah,
This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand about Washington.
Bob, to you, effective moment for Castro. What's the strategy there? You help prepare people in terms of strategy. What's the strategy there?
The strategy, I guess, resembles Napoleon's march on Moscow. I mean, it's a disaster. The guy committed hara-kiri on television. People hated it. Twitter blew up with the dislike of it. And I can't imagine what he thinks strategically he's accomplishing. Even if it worked, that is, if he hurt Biden, probably wouldn't help him. It would help one of the other candidates.
Doesn't it reveal the meanness at his core? Because it is not in his self-interest to do that. I'm not a huge Biden fan, but it made me like Biden more. It made me want to rise to Biden's defense and say, come on, even if you don't agree with him politically, he's had 50 years of public service. You don't go after a guy like that.
Well, Biden's a nice guy, number one.
Clearly.
Number two, Castro was factually wrong.
Yes.
And number three, I think you're absolutely right, because it wasn't just going after Biden. Then he starts attacking Pete Buttigieg for saying, why are we doing this? Right. I think it was one of the worst moments I've seen in a debate in a long time. It was up there with Rick Perry.
Oh, with the three things?
And by the way, Rick Perry, the thing that he forgot, the department he wanted to eliminate, he forgot, is now the secretary of, which is a strange irony of things, too. Peter, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where when you're polling at a couple percent, you kind of have to pull that Hail Mary, and clearly it blew up in his face. And it's one of those things where if I were on the Democrat side and I were like, look, we just have to do anything we can to beat President Trump, I probably wouldn't be going and trying to do that to the eventual front runner, because you could serve in that guy's cabinet, you could serve as his VP. you could at least go campaign for him. And when you go and you're just really making those ad hominem attacks, making fun of him on TV, how are you going to be able to go and campaign for him and actually build an electoral coalition?
Yeah, our pal Mike Murphy, who's on this show frequently, who is a GOP strategist, said that not only did he blow up his presidential candidate, he blew up his vice presidential candidacy at the same time as well. Another moment that is getting a lot of buzz is Beto O'Rourke talking about guns in the wake of the shooting in his hometown of El Paso.
And in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15. And that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Lisa, you're nodding your head.
I'm choked up now watching that again, and I've seen it already a couple of times. There's not a moment that was more authentic, that was more powerful. You could hear, I think, the emotion in his voice. When you use those kinds of details, that's what makes you a master storyteller. And how could anybody disagree with that? We're clearly going to be there at some point in our history. Why don't we just get there now?
Peter,
I strongly disagree with it because I think when you look at the polling, I think you'll see there's a large majority of Americans, myself not included, who are okay with banning AR-15s and AK-47s. But I think if you really went and polled Americans and said, hey, are you okay with a mandatory buyback, which, by the way, is predicated on the idea that the government owned it previously? They're not going to be okay with that because to enforce it, you are going to need federal agents with guns to go and take them. And I don't think the average American is okay with that. If you are, then that's fine. That's not something that I'm okay with.
Yeah,
though.
Bob, you literally run polls. How's the polling on confiscating people's guns?
Well, there isn't a lot of polling on confiscating people's guns. There is a lot of polling, as Peter says, on whether or not we should have AK-47s or assault rifles. And there's overwhelming support for the idea that we should outlaw them. We did outlaw them, by the way, between 94 and 2004, and the number of mass shootings went down.
But we didn't buy them back.
No, but I think this is a debate worth having. Why do we want to let hundreds of thousands or millions of assault rifles sit out there after we've outlawed the sale of new ones? Look, it may not work. It may backfire on Beto if he's the nominee. But I suspect that given what this country has been through, that a lot of people will support this. By the way, that was Beto Unchained. What happened to him, what happened to El Paso and his reaction to it has changed him as a candidate. He is not the kind of button-down candidate he was for the first couple of months, 3 months of this presidential campaign. He's decided to go out there and say, if I can use this phrase, whatever the hell he believes.
Yeah.
And,
So,
you know, just
actually saying, I think it would be whatever the F he believes is actually what he's saying.
Well, I'm trying to obey the rules.
You know, just because something is illegal doesn't mean we're going to send guys with guns to go enforce it. There's a lot of things in this country that we ban.
Wait. You're saying if we ban AR-15s and I, someone who has an AR-15 in my closet, say, you know what, I'm not giving it up, you're telling me the government's not going to come take that from me?
Probably
Give me a break.
we don't. You know,
That's
we
probably
no,
not
we
how
don't.
it will
We
happen,
don't. That's
actually.
not the way things work. A lot of things are illegal. For example, drugs. We don't have people going door to door in every home to find drugs with guns. That's not the way it works. But you know, we would have a substantial, I think, part of the population who would say, okay, I'm going to go along with that voluntarily. Here's my gun. Give me the money. What if we reduced it by 10%, 20%, 50%? You know, it doesn't have to be 100%. Think of the lives that we would save, the people who would not be dying, bleeding out over the course of an hour, like Beto described.
Think
I mean,
of the
for
lives
God's
that are
sakes, we have
saved
to do
every
something.
time someone that's a homeowner grabs their AR-15 and defends against someone coming to their house. We don't hear
Give
these
me an
stories.
example.
We don't hear
Give me
them
an
because they're
example.
very
No,
rare.
One example. Give me one example. You just said
we don't
every
hear about
time.
it. We don't hear about it in the media. There are there are millions of
Fox
gun owners.
News would be happy to broadcast it.
There are millions of gun owners who use their guns defensively every day without shooting
we're not
them.
talking about gun owners. We're talking about assault rifles.
Yes.
Give me an example of someone who saved their lives by using an assault rifle. You know, one of these mass shootings, what was amazing was the cops arrived in 1 minute.
Yeah.
But
and it
in that
wasn't-
1 minute, because somebody had this kind of rifle, he inflicted incredible damage, death, and people who were
In
wounded.
30 seconds,
Let's
you
get
take down a dozen
let's get to the
people.
practicality of it, though. Are you talking about just AR-15s and AK-47s, or are you going to ban all semi-automatic rifles? Because there are semi-automatic hunting rifles with much bigger bullets than an AR-15 that can still be loaded in the same way.
Well,
That's a
Beto's
classic-
only talking about
That's a classic flaw I'm not saying that banning these rifles will solve every problem
Right.
and will prevent every shooting. When we banned them between 94 and 2004, there was a precipitous drop in mass shootings. We ought to ban them. They're not useful for anything except killing people.
If we save one classroom full of kindergartners, it's worth it.
Well, up next, please allow me to introduce our group of focus group. This is undecided Democratic voters. How did they score the Democratic debate? Who did they see in a whole new light? We're also going to be talking with our panel about what comes next when it comes to the Democratic race. And later, we talk about the president and homelessness. Stay with us. You're watching The Issue Is. Doesn't get better than Rolling Stones, too, right?
Never does.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah.
From Southern California to the Bay Area, you're watching The Issue Is.
Welcome back. This week, the big issue is the Democratic debate. We assembled a focus group of undecided Democrats to watch it with us and share their thoughts moments after it ended. Who do you think won the debate? Around the horn. Who won the debate?
To me, it was Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren.
O'Rourke. Beto. Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren.
Beto O'Rourke.
Beto O'Rourke.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
He went like all in on every single subject.
There was something that came through with him that told me that anything that he says he's going to do, I believe that he has the courage and the compassion to actually see it through.
And he's finally saying what we want to hear as Americans. We're going to take these guns off the streets that are for war. We're going to get rid of these bullets that are designed for nothing but killing people. And he sounds like Elisa said he's going to actually do exactly that no matter what.
Where are the votes for a gun confiscation in terms of making that happen in the country?
That's absolutely true, but it has to start somewhere. And you have to first have somebody that's willing to take on that fight.
Is there anybody that's afraid that that position may make it hard for him to win a general election?
I think it may make it hard for him, but I don't think that's something that he's really concerned about. I think he's speaking his truth, and I think that's the most important. He's saying stuff that politicians aren't saying right now.
So raise your hand if you are now more likely to vote for Beto O'Rourke than you were coming into tonight.
Oh, definitely.
Were you guys even thinking about Beto O'Rourke?
I wasn't even thinking about him at all, none whatsoever.
Exactly.
I didn't.
How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less.
Why Elizabeth Warren?
Because every time she spoke, it was substantive, and she talked about the corruption in government.
And I think everybody else had their highs and their lows throughout the debate, but I think she remained the most consistent the whole time.
She's been very consistent in most of the debates, and I like her answers. She doesn't try to be combative.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
Did that play well with anybody?
No, that bothered me hugely. I mean, I'm obviously the oldest person here, so the ageism is not okay with me.
Did that attack make anybody like Julian Castro more?
Not at all.
No, he was very petty and very crap in the barrel, king of the hillish tonight.
So whatever else he was going to say after that, I was turned off. I think we have people that respect our seniors. We respect those that pave the way for us.
What did we make of Mayor Pete?
I didn't see a leap.
Exactly.
I didn't see a leap.
It's Kamala Harris. Thoughts on her tonight?
No.
That plane crashed.
Cory Booker. Our thoughts on Cory?
Kept saying, my people I represent, those from the projects. And I'm just like, get off of that and tell us about policy for America as a whole.
He definitely won the last debate. This debate, I just felt like he took a step back instead of really pushing forward with showing his policy.
Thoughts on Bernie?
Bernie was Bernie.
Bernie, yeah.
Bernie says the same thing over and over again. So at some point you kind of just go, okay, Bernie, that's enough.
I think Bernie is kind of burnt out.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of our candidates.
After tonight, raise your hand if you're still undecided.
I'm still undecided.
It's so up and down.
Yeah. So we're going to have more debates. You can see their full discussion right now on my Elex Michaelson Facebook page. Back with our panel, Peter Van Voorhis, Lisa Bloom, Bob Shrum. I think the question is sort of where do we go from here, and does this debate change anything, Bob?
I think fundamentally the race has not changed and won't change. Biden is up around 28, 29 in our USC Dornsife LA Times poll. Then you have Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in a virtual tie. I think she's been taking support away from him. They have a mutual non-aggression pact, so I think he's probably not going to go after her. But I do think you might see Beto rising again. He was at one time at 10%. Then he went down because of the nature of his campaign. I think he may come back up off this. I think Buttigieg he's an amazingly adept debater. And he had some really good emotional moments. He's down at 4 or 5. I think he could come up a little. I don't think Kamala Harris helped herself. She had too many lines that were obviously rehearsed and practiced and practiced and practiced. And that's exactly what they sounded like.
You remember the last time she had a T-shirt ready with "I was that girl," like instantly. Are the T-shirts ready for her lines from last night?
Well, and she laughs at her own jokes before the audience laughs, and that's really a bad thing to do.
Your thoughts? Where do we go from here?
I really was impressed with Elizabeth Warren. She was not my candidate before. She may very well have won me over last night. She's so bright. She's such a master communicator. She's got the policies. She's got the right tone. She's got the toughness. I think everybody else to me is a distant second. I think we have such a double standard for Joe Biden that as long as he doesn't bumble too much, he's amazing, right? Nobody else gets to have that kind of a standard. But as long as he's in and so many people like him, I guess he's going to continue to be the front runner.
There's a reason for that, I think. People think that he is the person most likely to beat Trump.
I know, but is that because he's an older white guy? Honestly, why doesn't Elizabeth Warren get that presumption?
What if because people may want, A, to be sure that they're going to beat Trump, or to have the best chance to beat Trump, and B, Biden is a nice man who clearly understands these issues.
Yeah, but is nice going to beat Trump?
Elizabeth Warren wasn't Obama's vice president. That counts for something there, too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's...
But, okay, so, Peter, you're a Republican here. You work in the consulting world. Who do you think is the toughest opponent for President Trump?
I think the toughest opponent in terms of someone that would be viable is Elizabeth Warren. I think that Elizabeth Warren... at this point, I see it as almost a Biden-Warren race. Biden basically has to count out the days till Iowa, New Hampshire, and the rest of the caucuses and primaries and hope that he's able to keep this same momentum in polling. Elizabeth Warren kind of been trending up. And I think Trump, he, with the whole American Indian thing, won 1,064th, whatever she is, I should say. I think he kind of wasted his best ammo on that. And again, I think Trump is an unpredictable personality. I think that he's able to come up with insults, ways to tear people down, whatever, that we don't even know yet. So I can't say for sure. I think that if Warren is the nominee, he'll come up with a lot of ways to tear her down, but it's really going to be a race of who dislikes the other candidate the least.
And how many times will we hear the phrase Pocahontas?
A lot.
And in Biden's case, is he home listening to his record player?
Yeah, exactly.
Ouch.
By the way, I resembled that remark because I had a record player.
I did not. Past tense.
Although, no, actually, I still have it.
Okay,
I have it downstairs.
He's reaching out to the vinyl community.
But let me tell you, the predominant majority of people who vote in these Democratic primaries all owned record players.
Yeah.
And they're older people.
And by the way, this week there was a news story that more people are buying records this year than CDs because vinyl is such a big thing with hipsters.
Yeah, we download everything.
Up next, President Trump traveling to California next week ahead of visits to San Francisco and LA. He's teasing a dramatic change when it comes to homelessness. We'll explain and we'll debate it next.
Actually, we stream, we don't even download. Download is passé.
Right? Could the president be helping with homelessness in California? He's visiting LA and San Francisco for fundraisers early next week. He may or may not talk about this idea, which was floated this week, essentially breaking up homeless camps, putting those people into empty government buildings. LA City Councilman Mike Bonin, not a fan. Here's his tweet, quote, "First they came for the immigrants, then they came for the homeless. Are you next?" Let's talk about that more with our panel, Peter Van Voorhis, Lisa Bloom, Bob Shrum. Peter, is it good to have break up the camps? And what do you make of this?
Look, all I can say is whatever the city of Los Angeles has done to get us to this point, I don't think is humane for the people who are homeless. I, as a conservative, not a fan of federal intervention going in and telling the states what to do, especially, in a state like California. We should be able to manage our own affairs. But when you have typhoid, when you have street encampments everywhere, and literally just people who are not able to get on their feet, it may be something where a drastic solution to at least temporarily stop this is required. I don't think anyone likes it, whether you're poor, whether you're wealthy. I think it affects you a lot.
So
as an attorney, is this legal?
This is going to shock you. I think I agree with Peter. I just spent a month-long time in downtown LA trying a sexual harassment case, and I stayed downtown in a hotel the whole time. It is shameful the homeless crisis in this city. It is shame on us for allowing this to go on. I am not a fan of anything that Donald Trump has ever done. But if he can do something to help the homeless problem here, that clearly we have failed in the city of LA and the state of California, then good for him, and I will cheer for it.
Bob?
My wife is very involved with the Downtown Women's Center, and she also was very involved in passing Measure H, the tax increase that has provided community services, which is what the county can do. It can't build buildings, but it can provide services. If all we're going to do is throw these people off the streets and dump them into empty federal buildings without the services that they need, without the supervision, we're going to create crack houses. Women are going to be assaulted.
That's true.
This is a completely half-baked idea as it's been presented so far. Now, if he wants to come forward with something like a Marshall Plan that involves services, involves purpose-built housing, and not just throwing people into an empty office.
There has to be food, there has to be medication, there has to be treatment.
There has to be supervision, there have to be social services.
We, as a city, have failed.
I'm not arguing that we have. I'm not arguing that.
And the mayor and the governor admit that we have failed.
And ideally, you know, yeah, the federal government may not have that solution where they just put people in the buildings, but at least they have somewhere to stay, and then Los Angeles and California can have some
work. If women,
I know, but it's
it's
supplemented by services from the state and county, and it's better than being on Skid Row.
It has to be holistic. It has to all be put together. If you just take people and dump them in an FAA facility.
No, we should definitely not do that.
Yeah. Another big issue when it comes to California politics is this issue of a gig economy. This is, should people that work for Uber or Lyft, should they be considered gig workers, or should they be employees and get all the benefits of being an employee? Uber and Lyft certainly don't think so. The California legislature says they should. Gavin Newsom now has an ability to sign that bill. He says that he will. It's called AB 5. You've worked a lot on this issue in terms of some of your cases. What do you make, Lisa?
I have. So I do a lot of employment law, and I represent a lot of sexual assault victims in Ubers and other ride shares. It is an epidemic problem, and Uber takes the position, we're not responsible because our drivers are independent contractors. So if you want to sue them, go ahead, but don't sue us. This would be a sea change, because Uber would now become responsible for what their drivers do. And if they sexually assault women, they would be on the line. And I can only imagine how quickly the safety is going to improve so that they can avoid liability. Let's have cameras in the cars. Let's have panic buttons on the apps. Let's have additional safety features to help women, and I think this would help us.
Peter, are you concerned that the price may be added on to consumers, and this could end up really hurting business in this state?
Look, all those arguments, I think, have tons of merit. I think it will hurt businesses. I think it will make things more expensive. I think there's going to be other ramifications like Uber and Lyft, not in legislation, but choosing to schedule drivers for their shifts. At the same time, though, here's what I'm concerned about. We don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, but these jobs are going away. They are going to be automated away. And just theoretically, I think that if we speed up this process by basically making it more and more expensive to retain these drivers, well, if I were Uber or Lyft, I'd probably invest billions of dollars in making those driverless cars work sooner. We may literally get rid of those jobs that are helping some people kind of make ends meet with supplemental income. So you just never know what the effects could be.
I asked Mayor Pete Buttigieg that very question. Isn't this going to speed up the automation process for Uber and Lyft? And he basically didn't really answer it. Bob,
there's my answer.
I think the solution to the immediate problem here is sort of halfway in between what's about to be signed and what we have now. Lisa's absolutely right. They ought to be held responsible for the conduct of their drivers. There ought to be cameras in the cars, a panic button on the app. All of that's correct. But I'll tell you, if we go across the board and we raise costs tremendously, and the amount of Ubers and Lyfts available on the street go down drastically, you're going to see a big political backlash. And Democrats are going to say, maybe we went too far in this. I think taking care of the problem that Lisa's talking about is absolutely right. But did you ever use a taxi in LA before Uber or Lyft came around?
Yes.
They were terrible.
Yeah.
They're absolutely terrible.
I mean,
That's one of the reasons.
Arguably, they're way less safe. Like, totally not to discount what happens. This is the first time I actually heard about it, you know, talking to you before the show and stuff, that happened. But, I mean, I think there's the old adage of anyone could be in a taxi and just kidnap you, and there's no electronic record.
No, because they have much higher safety standards. They have fingerprinting, they have background checks, and the numbers are
what keeps someone from getting a yellow car and putting a taxi logo on it? No, nothing does.
No,
there's licensing requirements.
There are licensing requirements.
But this is better for the Uber drivers because they get the benefit of California's really excellent employment laws. Overtime, fair pay, anti-discrimination laws will help them. It's much better for them.
Another story that people are talking about, actress Felicity Huffman. She's going to be going to prison for her role in the college admissions scandal. Video from her arrival at the federal courthouse you're looking at right there. Earlier, prosecutors had recommended she serve 1 month in prison. The judge sentencing her to 14 days. She had pled guilty to a single count of conspiracy. She basically had lied and convinced a proctor to lie about her daughter's SAT scores. 14 days, does this seem about right?
You know, we have the culture where we want to throw the book at everybody and incarcerate everybody for things that they did that we don't like. That's not working for us as a country. I wouldn't give her any jail time. I'd assess a massive fine, hopefully millions of dollars if she has that kind of money, to go to scholarships for the kids who didn't get in because of what she did. To me, that would be justice.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and we were kind of talking about this again before the show, talked about a lot of things before that. If you're able to donate $10 million to a college, get a building with your grandfather's name on it, and go to that Ivy League school or state school or whatever it is, and then you can't do it at the $500,000 level or whatever they spent to go bribe your kids to get into school, I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. I think these are prosecutors that are essentially trying to make a statement, and honestly, if I were ever thinking about getting my kid, into college or whatever, which I don't have any yet, I would definitely not be fudging the numbers at all. So I guess if they wanted to make a statement, they made one.
Last word, Bob, as somebody who works in college.
Yeah, 14 days, I think it's a good symbolic message. That's why the judge sentenced her to 14 days. It's not going to be, a part of this problem of putting too many people in prison for too long. It's just going to send a message that you can't do this. The people who are in real trouble are the people who did not plead guilty, who may face much longer sentences.
That's true. They're rolling the dice.
Lori Loughlin is among them. All right, up next, for the love of sport or for the love of money, should college athletes in California get paid? We'll talk about that. We also want to encourage you to check out our latest podcast. It's with Peter Van Voorhis, talking about being a young conservative living in LA, his interactions with the Trump family, a whole lot more. And this show, all of our past shows, available in podcast form. Just search for The Issue Is wherever you stream. We'll be right back.
Another OJ.
I love this. Don't you love the OJs?
You got the record player out.
Peter, yeah, you got the vinyl.
Show me the money.
Who can forget that iconic scene in Jerry Maguire? Cuba Gooding Jr. was shown the money, but he was a pro athlete. Should college athletes make money? This week, the California legislature voted unanimously, something bipartisan, to allow college athletes to accept endorsement money. The NCAA, though, urging Governor Newsom to veto this bill, threatening that they will take away, essentially, all the wins for California schools if they do this. What do we think? Good idea, bad idea to pay athletes? Peter.
Great idea. Democrats and Republicans came together for this bill. It's one of these things when you look at it, not every athlete can be LeBron James, who is actually someone who supports this bill. Not everyone's going to have a 20-year career in sports. And some of these people, they spend 10, 15 years as a kid working up to it, and they may just have college and potentially, if they're lucky, a few years as a pro athlete. So, of course, we should pay them. I think the idea that a lot of these players are at school to study, they're really more there to play sports. They are there to study in some ways, but definitely you should get paid for that.
Lisa.
Well, who's already profiting off of these guys? The schools, right? With the millions and millions of dollars that they're bringing in. Mm-hmm. Of course, the individual should get some compensation for his or her labor. I think that's only fair. That's why it's bipartisan.
What about the idea that the scholarship itself is the compensation?
Well, that's part of it, but that's not the entirety of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, this is very different from saying we're going to pay you to play. We're going to give you $100,000 to play for a college football team or college baseball team. This is about your likeness, whether or not you can give an endorsement to a product and get paid for it. I don't have a big problem with that. And this thing about the NCAA is going to void all California sports.
That's not going to happen. Too
profitable.
TV revenue,
right.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah, there is a lot of money at stake. All right, well, speaking of college sports, I want to end with a shout out. This is one last song to mark a milestone. Dr. Art Bartner is celebrating his 50th year as the director of the USC Trojan Marching Band. So let's hear it right now. The band recorded this many years ago. It's the only platinum hit for a college marching band, Tusk.
I remember
the Fleetwood
it.
Mac.
Yes.
So fight on to Dr. Bartner. Congrats on the anniversary. Go cheer him on this year. Thanks for watching The Issue Is. Have a great weekend and fight on.
That is so great. That's an oldie. That's before your time.
Yeah.
We remember Tusk.
Tusk.